And still Dembélé! Dembélé has bent in a brilliant goal! Dembélé, oh, he has a World Cup hat-trick!
June 27, 2026. Boston Stadium. France are already leading, but Ousmane Dembélé isn't finished. One sharp movement behind the defense, one calm touch, and another perfect finish. Minutes later, he does it again. Then comes the third, a World Cup hat-trick. The stadium rises to its feet as the man once mocked for wasting chances walks away with the match ball. Just a few years ago, many football fans joked whenever Dembélé appeared in missed chance compilations. Today, he's carrying the reigning world champions with the confidence of a player who believes every shot belongs in the back of the net. This isn't just the story of a footballer finding form. It's the story of how one of football's biggest disappointments became one of its most feared players, and why everything changed only after many people had begun to doubt him. If you enjoy football stories that go beyond the headlines and uncover the moments most fans never hear about, hit subscribe. You won't find documentaries like these everywhere. Before Ousmane Dembélé became the player terrifying defenders at the 2026 FIFA World Cup, he spent years carrying a completely different reputation. Everyone knew he had incredible talent. Very few believed he would ever fulfill it. Born in Vernon, France in May 1997, Dembélé's rise happened almost overnight. After developing through Rennes Academy, he needed only one full professional season in Ligue 1 to convince Borussia Dortmund that he was worth taking a chance on. The move changed everything. In Germany, Dembélé looked like football's next superstar. At just 19 years old, he finished his only Bundesliga season with 10 goals and 21 assists in all competitions. Every week he embarrassed defenders with impossible dribbles, explosive acceleration, and something almost impossible to coach. He looked equally dangerous with either foot. Scouts couldn't decide which foot was actually stronger. Sometimes he'd score with his right. The next week he'd curl one into the top corner with his left. Defenders simply stopped trying to predict him. When Neymar completed his world record move from Barcelona to Paris in the summer of 2017, the Catalan giants moved quickly. They identified Dembélé as the player who could help fill the enormous gap Neymar had left behind. Barcelona paid an initial fee of €105 million, with performance bonuses capable of taking the transfer close to €148 million. At that moment, he became one of the most expensive footballers in history. The expectations were impossible. Supporters weren't expecting a good young winger. They were expecting the next global superstar, someone capable of sharing the spotlight with Lionel Messi and leading Barcelona into a new era. But football rarely follows the script people imagine. Only weeks after arriving at Camp Nou, disaster struck. A serious hamstring injury ruled him out for months. He worked his way back. Another injury followed. Then another, and another. Instead of building rhythm, Dembélé spent season after season moving between the treatment room and the training pitch. Every time fans believed he had finally turned a corner, another muscle injury pushed him back to the beginning. The physical setbacks were only part of the problem. Stories about his professionalism began appearing almost as often as reports about his injuries. Spanish media regularly questioned his preparation, his diet, and his lifestyle away from football. Reports claimed he stayed awake until the early hours playing video games, missed alarms, and occasionally arrived late for training. Barcelona even assigned extra staff to help him maintain better routines, but the headlines refused to disappear. The conversation slowly changed. People stopped asking how good Dembélé could become. Instead, they started asking whether he would ever stay fit long enough to prove it. Every brilliant performance was followed by another setback. Every exciting moment was followed by another headline questioning his commitment. Manager after manager tried to unlock the player everyone knew existed. Ernesto Valverde trusted him. Quique Setién barely had the opportunity because injuries kept interrupting his progress. Ronald Koeman demanded more discipline. Then came Xavi Hernandez. For a while, it finally looked as though everything was coming together. Dembélé became one of Barcelona's most creative players again. His pace returned, his confidence grew, his assists started piling up, and many supporters believed they were finally watching the player Barcelona had paid so much money to sign years earlier. But football has a habit of changing direction when nobody expects it. Barcelona's financial situation had become impossible to ignore. The club needed money. Paris Saint-Germain needed another elite attacker. During the summer of 2023, PSG activated Dembélé's release clause, bringing the French winger back to his home country. Many fans barely reacted. Some believed Barcelona had finally accepted defeat. Others thought PSG were simply collecting another famous name. Very few people imagined this transfer would completely change the direction of Dembélé's career. Because waiting for him in Paris wasn't just a new club, it was the manager who would reshape his career. When Ousmane Dembélé arrived in Paris during the summer of 2023, the headlines focused on only one man, Kylian Mbappé. Everything at PSG revolved around him. He was the club's biggest star, their leading goal scorer, and the player expected to decide the biggest matches. Dembélé wasn't arriving to become the face of the project. He was simply expected to provide pace, create chances, and support the team's biggest name. His first season reflected exactly that. Dembélé constantly beat defenders, created opportunities, and stretched opposition back lines. But the numbers still didn't silence his critics. Too many promising attacks ended without a goal. Too many brilliant dribbles finished with a shot flying wide of the post. The old conversation returned. He's exciting to watch, but his finishing still isn't good enough. Football fans had heard those words for years. Yet inside the club, something different was happening. Luis Enrique focused on his overall performances, rather than public criticism. He was studying every movement, every sprint, every decision with and without the ball. The talent had never disappeared. It simply lacked consistency. As the months passed, PSG became less dependent on individual brilliance and more focused on collective football. Every player was expected to defend, press aggressively, recover possession quickly, and attack as one unit. No exceptions. Whether you were a young academy graduate or one of the world's biggest stars, the demands stayed the same. That philosophy became even more important when football witnessed one of the biggest transfers in modern history. In the summer of 2024, Kylian Mbappé left Paris. To many people, it looked like the end of PSG's European ambitions. How could they replace a player capable of scoring more than 40 goals every season? Pundits predicted PSG would struggle. Opponents believed the team had become weaker overnight. Luis Enrique believed the opposite. Instead of searching for another Mbappé, Enrique rebuilt the attack around movement, pressing, and constant positional changes. Dembélé was no longer told to stay wide and wait for the ball. Now he was encouraged to drift inside, attack central spaces, press defenders relentlessly, and appear where defenders least expected him. It sounds simple. In reality, it completely changed his game. Suddenly, Dembélé wasn't receiving the ball 40 yards away from goal. He was receiving the ball in far more dangerous central positions. Instead of creating every attack for someone else, he was finishing them himself. His confidence exploded. The hesitation that had followed him for years slowly disappeared. The same player who once overthought every chance began shooting instinctively. His movement became sharper. His decision-making became quicker. Most importantly, he started believing that every big match belonged to him. The goals arrived one after another. Then came the assists. Then came the performances that forced even his biggest critics to admit something had changed. This wasn't the unpredictable winger from Barcelona anymore. This was a complete forward capable of deciding the biggest nights in European football. The transformation wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It wasn't because Dembélé suddenly learned how to play football. The ability had always been there. What changed was the environment around him. For the first time in his career, his body stayed healthy, his role perfectly matched his strengths, and his manager demanded absolute commitment every single day. The football world spent years asking where Ousmane Dembélé's potential had gone. The truth was, it had never gone anywhere. It was simply waiting for the right system to unlock it. If you're enjoying this journey so far, make sure you're subscribed. We don't just tell football stories, we uncover the moments that completely changed careers, clubs, and history. By the end of the 2024-25 season, the football world had completely changed its opinion. PSG lifted every major trophy they competed for, including the UEFA Champions League. Dembélé wasn't just another attacker in the squad anymore. He had become one of the team's leaders. His goals, assists, relentless pressing, and ability to deliver in the biggest moments made him one of the most complete forwards in Europe. After years of injuries, criticism, and endless questions about his potential, Dembélé stood on football's biggest individual stage and collected the Ballon d'Or. It wasn't just an award for one incredible season. It was proof that one of football's greatest comeback stories was finally complete. But Dembélé wasn't finished. Only months later, he arrived at the 2026 FIFA World Cup, wearing the France shirt, with a completely different reputation. He was no longer the talented winger trying to prove himself. He was one of the leaders of the defending world champions. Then came the night that reminded everyone why. June 27, 2026. France faced Norway in their final group stage match, knowing a victory would secure first place in the group. Dembélé stole the show. His movement was impossible to track. His finishing was calm. Every attack looked dangerous the moment the ball reached his feet. By halftime, he had completed a sensational hat-trick as France defeated Norway 4-1, finishing top of their group with another statement performance. It was one of the finest individual displays of the tournament, and another reminder that the player once criticized for wasting chances had become one of the world's most dangerous forwards. Think about how unbelievable that journey really is. From constant injuries to endless criticism, to being labeled one of football's biggest disappointments, then becoming a Champions League winner, a Ballon d'Or winner, and one of the biggest stars of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Sometimes talent isn't enough. Sometimes a player doesn't need new ability. He needed the right manager, the right system, and finally a healthy run of football. For Ousmane Dembélé, everything finally came together. And when it did, the football world finally saw the version of Ousmane Dembélé that many had always believed was possible. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe for more original football stories that go beyond the highlights and reveal the moments that changed the game forever.